Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, it's a busy day in Libyan waters. Thousands of migrants are rescued in 48 hours. Those making the risky journey are plucked from the water by coastguard, military and private aid boats. Also, protests continue in Rif in northern Morocco. Dozens more are arrested as police come down hard on demonstrators who take to the streets despite roadblocks. And political rivalries in DR Congo jeopardise the finances of one of the country's top football training centres. Tout-Puissant Mazembe Academy's struggling to stay afloat after its founder, opposition figure Moise Katumbi, left the country and was later sentenced to prison in absentia. But first, over 8,000 would-be migrants trying to travel from Africa to Europe have been rescued off the coast of Libya since the start of the week. The notoriously dangerous journey across the Mediterranean has cost thousands of lives this year alone. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
When the sea is calm, traffickers send more boats with migrants across the Mediterranean. On Tuesday, Libyan coastguards rescued these men and women. Among them were mothers with children. Some had babies who were just a few days old.
Today, 147 illegal migrants from different nationalities were rescued. Among them were 4 children and 20 women.
According to Italy's Coast Guard, more than 8,000 migrants have been rescued in waters off Libya these last 2 days. In Libya, those who were rescued were put in trucks and sent back to migrant camps. This boat belongs to Doctors Without Borders. It arrived on Tuesday in Sicily. 877 migrants were on board.
Yesterday was a very busy day. We rescued the largest number of people ever, more than 1,000. Among them, many women with children. In the last 4 years, from 2012 to 2016, the number of minors coming to Italian ports has tripled, and the number of girls arriving alone has quadrupled. Most of them are Nigerians and Eritreans.
More than 73,000 migrants have arrived in Italy since January. That's a 14% increase from the same period last year. But many have failed to reach the coast. According to the UN, more than 2,000 people have died since the beginning of the year while trying to cross the Mediterranean in the hope of a better life.
Well, look now at some news in brief. Somali al-Shabaab extremists have claimed responsibility for a roadside bombing in Kenya in which 8 people were killed. 4 of Tuesday's victims were children returning to school after Eid celebrations. The remainder were police officers. The explosion happened between Marani and Kiunga, not far from the border. Also, following its first ever audit of the voters' register, Kenya's Electoral Commission says there will be 5 million new voters in August's general elections, taking the total to 19.6 million voters overall. Although almost 90,000 dead voters were removed in the review, investigators fear another 1 million deceased people may still be logged. It's a key vote that's likely to be a tough battle along ethnic lines. Incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta is facing an unprecedented challenge from longtime rival Raila Odinga, who's leading a united opposition coalition. On Tuesday, Namibia became the latest of South Africa's neighbours to ban imports of its poultry because of a serious outbreak of bird flu. Following the detection of the H5N8 strain at 2 South African farms last week, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique stopped accepting poultry products. In a bid to contain the spread of the virus, Pretoria has brought in a nationwide ban on the sale of live chickens and is culling thousands of birds. Now, unrest continues in Rif in northern Morocco. Protests that began towards the end of last year after a fishmonger was crushed to death inside a garbage truck continue to spark clashes. Demonstrators say that several dozen more activists were arrested this week following a particularly harsh police crackdown. Nadia Massi has the story.
We want dignity, freedom and social justice, the rallying cry of these Moroccan protesters. Unrest in the country's ethnically Berber Rif region has been bubbling for months. But the Eid al-Fitr holiday saw demonstrations spill over into violent clashes. These grainy images shot by activists show police forces attacking protesters who filled the streets of Hoceima in their hundreds, demanding the release of scores of prisoners. The crackdown began at dawn with a curfew imposed and roads into the city closed. Protesters were then met with tear gas and water cannon. Authorities say that more than 30 policemen were also injured in the ensuing clashes. The Hirak al-Shabi, or the People's Movement, has been leading the anti-government rallies since October, decrying corruption, poverty and police brutality. Around 100 protesters have been jailed in what Amnesty International has called a chilling wave of arrests. In an attempt to quell the civil dissent, King Mohammed VI called on the government to speed up development projects in the region.
Well, the hold-up in starting the clean-up of the polluted waters and ruined mangroves of Ogoniland in the Niger Delta has frustrated communities living there. A year after Shell agreed to pay millions in compensation and start tackling the damage done by devastating oil spills, and little progress has been made so far.
On the banks of the Niger Delta, the boats are docked and the fishermen absent, signs of an area desecrated by the region's oil industry. Ogoniland in southern Nigeria is suffering the consequences of 50 years of oil exploitation. The water is not fit to drink, and the few fishermen still working must travel miles just to find aquatic life.
We can't see no fish in this water because the water is stained with crude oil, and no living fish can be available to survive with this water. So the oil is polluted everything.
1 year ago, the Nigerian government launched a massive project to clean up Ogoni, spurred by the UN. The cleanup operation, costing an estimated $1 billion, was due to last some 30 years, with oil company Shell covering part of the costs. But 1 year on, only $10 million have been released and work has yet to begin.
We are trying to navigate very carefully to ensure that everything that will be put in place is something that will be durable and is something that could meet the test line that is expected of this cleanup by the United Nations.
Frustrated with the slow progress, local environmentalist Michael decided to plant trees to restore the damaged flora in the area in an attempt to counter the pollution.
Because of the pollution, a lot of carbon-related particles are thrown into the community and into the atmosphere. So the trees now trap and capture them, bring them down and use them for photosynthesis. Now when they use the carbon for photosynthesis, the trees will return oxygen for human consumption, and we will live.
The largest hydrocarbon reserve in Africa, the Delta has long attracted multinational and multi-billion-dollar oil companies. But with little progress on the cleanup, they've left a legacy of anger and frustration.
Well, political rivalries in DR Congo have jeopardized the future of one of the country's top football training centers. Tout-Puissant Mazembe Academy is in serious financial trouble after its founder, who's also one of DRC's key opposition figures, left the country last year.
The stars of African football. This is the DRC's Tout-Puissant Mazembe team, 5 times winner of the African Champions League. One of the team's most popular players came through the Tout-Puissant Mazembe Academy, set up in 2012 to train the next generation of footballers.
The academy taught me the basics. How to be strong, how to understand a lot of things, the techniques, the tactics.
But the training academy has been in turmoil since its founder, Moise Katumbi, left the country. A prominent businessman and presidential hopeful, he left for Belgium after facing trial. Since then, his contributions have stopped.
Every month, I weigh the players, and in April, for the first time in 5 years, they'd lost weight because we were forced to reduce their food and the number of meals per day.
But despite the smaller meals and fewer training sessions, the recruits still dream of following in the footsteps of players who've gone on to join professional teams.
At the academy, I'm hoping to become a professional player, to play overseas in Europe, rather than in my own neighbourhood.
Tout-Puissant Mazembe remains the DRC's top football club, and its academy incredibly popular, with 6,000 applicants for just 15 places. Coaches and players just have to hope that excellence, not just patronage, are enough to keep the school afloat.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.